All right. Anyway, are we ready to talk about Sun Tzu's Art of War?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, you
All
go.
right.
Go ahead.
Yay! All right.
Do this.
I'm down.
All right. So let's review we're on chapter 3. Chapter 1 was all about calculations. The main takeaway for calculations are you have to basically calculate if you can win the fight. If you can't win, don't fight. You use deception, you ghost. You do not engage an enemy you have no chance of winning against. Now, if you...
So, TFM.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm devil's advocate, Cat. What happens if you field your entire quote-unquote army to achieve the objective? For the quick win. For the win that nobody suspected that could be won, and you want to take someone out of the fight before, you get into a battle of attrition. Go ahead.
All right, you need to spit out your comments a lot faster, because it's like every time you're like, but TFM, let me say something.
Well,
What if...
That was funny.
What if someone... And I'm like, God damn it, Cat, spit it out. Like, whoa, hold on. What if...
I will do
it's
that
like,
next time.
You talk like old... You're like old people fucking. I just want you to know that. All right.
So that's British you.
Okay.
Shaved
So,
fucking monkey.
let me...
Fucking scratch. I will
Tea
scratch your
time, you
Celestine
need coffee
face.
time.
Fuck's
Oh my
sake.
God. Anyway,
Right.
so to answer your question, you do your calculations and determine that you have the advantage that you can win this fight. Chapter 2, you go hard and deep. You don't fuck around. You don't, no warning shots. You hit them hard and you crush them as quickly as possible, because the more drawn out the fight is, that's more resources, that's more lives. Like you're going to lose. Like if you are in a fight too long, you're going to lose. It's a matter of time. You'll get worn down. So you need to crush the enemy as quickly as possible. You need to hit them when they're weakest and mercilessly crush them. So that brings us to chapter 3. So we've done our calculations. We've determined that the enemy is vulnerable and we can win. We are ready to fucking crush them mercilessly, and now we're ready to plan the attack. So starting with the first section, generally in warfare, keeping a nation intact is best. Destroying a nation second best. Keeping an army intact is best. Destroying an army second best. Keeping a battalion intact, destroying a battalion second best. Keeping a company intact best. Destroying a company second best. Keeping a squad intact is best. Destroying a squad second best. Basically, it's very repetitive, but basically the point is, if you crush the enemy quickly and you preserve their infrastructure and their wealth and everything, that's good. You want to preserve the wealth of the nation you're attacking, so that once it surrenders, once it's defeated, it eliminates both what's the word I'm looking for? Collateral damage to the people, and also if you're going to conquer them, that's basically more wealth that you add to your own. If you have to utterly annihilate a country and kill everyone and salt the earth, what did you gain?
Nothing.
So it's
tax
better.
revenue.
Yeah, you cut the head off the serpent, and then everything's left intact. And now you can either add it to your own wealth, or if it was just a war of punishment and defense, they've learned a valuable lesson. But you didn't have you limited collateral damage, which is ideal.
But a lot of people would disagree with that if you're counting antiquity. Like, for instance, Carthage, even though they rebuilt it, they, in essence, destroyed it in the Third Punic War.
Right, it said second best. So ideally, you want to defeat your enemy, but leave everything intact so you can add it to your own empire or what have you.
Yes,
However,
exactly.
That's an ideal scenario. If that doesn't work, let's say the people are they're not going to have it. So then you have to kill them all. You have to burn everything. You have to salt the earth. But that's something you only do that when they force your hand. You don't do that because I'm going to get revenge on them. No, you do that because they force you to. And if you have to do it, you have to do it. But that's ideally, you don't want to do that. You want to defeat the enemy as quickly as possible, using as few resources of yours and destroying them as quickly by attacking their vulnerable points, so that you preserve the resources and you limit collateral damage. It says, therefore, To achieve 100 victories in 100 battles is not the highest excellence. To subjugate the enemy army without doing battle is the highest of excellence. So, again, kind of with the calculations. Even if you can't beat the enemy, ideally you want to beat the enemy without a fight. If you have to engage them, fine, but ideally, even if you win every battle you engage in, if you can basically defeat your enemy without battle, that's even better. Because that means no one died. No one on your side died. You didn't expend any resources. Even if you win the battle, I mean, soldiers are going to die. So it's far better to not have the battle happen and win than to fight the battle and win, but then lose your soldiers along the way. All right, sentence 3. Therefore, the best warfare strategy is to attack the enemy's plans. Next is to attack alliances. Next is to attack the army. And the worst is to attack a walled city. So think about like what these represent. So your plans are basically the ethereal ideas, ideologies, beliefs. You can attack these with deception. You confuse the enemy. You confront the enemy. You attack their plans to do something. You cause them to make mistakes, and you defeat them that way. To attack their alliances, this is important. So a lot of times enemies they'll gang up against you because they see you as a common enemy. Well, if you can peel off some of their allies and make them realize I'm not your enemy, you shouldn't be ganging up against me. In fact, you should be my ally. You may actually cause the enemy to surrender, because if you peel away their allies and they no longer outnumber you, they may just surrender to you and you don't even fight. No blood was shed. That's absolutely perfect because you defeated the enemy without a single fight. So by simply peeling their alliances away. So the first, disrupting their plans, involves deception, subterfuge. Disrupting their alliances requires diplomacy. So these are different skill sets. You don't want to send Mr. Musashi Ninja Man to go be a diplomat. You need a diplomat to do a diplomat's job. You use an assassin to do an assassin's job.
So TFM, playing devil's advocate.
Oh God, you and your devil's advocate.
Can you give me an example of this happening?
What, using peeling off alliances? During the Greek war with Persia, there were Greece used to be kind of a client state of Persia. Like they weren't officially part of the Persian Empire, but they had a lot of people in power who were allies with Persia. And Black Pigeon Speaks did a video about basically the guy who kicked off Western civilization by breaking away from Persia because he did a power play that didn't pan out. So then he knew he was going to get killed because he fucked up. So he basically started a rebellion to save his own life. And it just happened to work out.
That had nothing to do with the Greeks, though, because the Greeks.
It had nothing to do with the Greeks.
Okay. It had nothing. Are you trying to conflate Persia with the Greeks?
No, you're not listening.
No, I'm sorry, I'm cooking.
Greece defeated Persia, but originally Persia had influence over Greece. A lot of high-ranking government officials were allies of Persia. And they were trying to vie for the favor of the Persian king. One of them fucked up, realized he was going to get killed, so he basically started a rebellion in Greece against Persia to save his own life. And that started a chain of events, which basically Greece ended up defeating Persia. And that actually kicked off Western civilization.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree with that. No.
Yes. See, if you listen, take the dick out of your ears. I'm cooking. All right, laying siege to a city is only done when other options are not available. To build protective shields, armored wagons, and make ready other arms and equipment will require at least 3 months. To build an earthen mound against the walls will require another 3 months. If the general cannot control his temper and sends troops to swarm the walls, 1/3 of them will be killed, and the city will still not be taken. This is the kind of calamity when laying siege to a walled city. So, again, the worst thing to do is attack a walled city because the enemy has all the advantages. And, he's talking about, basically building battering rams and armored siege weapons is going to take 3 months. And then to build an earthen mound, basically build a dirt ramp up the wall, that's going to take another 3 months. And then he says, if you just surround the city and start attacking it, your men are going to get slaughtered. So, right. So there we go. Therefore, one who is skilled in warfare principles subdues the enemy without doing battle, takes the enemy's walled cities without attacking, and overthrows the enemy quickly without protracted warfare. His aim must be to take all under heaven intact. Therefore, weapons will not be blunted and gains will be intact. These are the principles of planning attacks. Therefore, in warfare, if 10 times the enemy's strength surround them, if 5 times attack them, if double, divide them, if equal, be able to fight them, if fewer, be able to evade them, if weaker, be able to avoid them. So this kind of goes back to the first chapter about calculations. You need to know if you can win. And if you can't win, you need to basically do what you have to do to either survive or get away or something, what we call pop, smoke, and ghost. Because you can't win. So some people have this attitude of, I'm gonna go down with the ship. You're fucking retarded because you just threw your life away for nothing. You didn't gain anything. And, fuck honor and fuck that shit. Live and win. Don't, go down with the ship and die just so people can be like, what a good man he was. He died. Yep. Let us all remember him.
I have to, sorry.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
No, go cook. Go cook. Cat, go cook your dinner.
I'm cooking right now.
Okay.
Tiffum, stop it. Behave. Now, what about the people that don't have anywhere to retreat to? So what if you have no forms of retreat?
Right, so right, you're fucked. But here's the thing: if that happens, you fucked up.
You build a tunnel. You build a big fucking tunnel.
The point is, you do not engage an enemy you can't win, and you have to use deception. You have to use these tools to survive. If you're put in a situation where you're fighting an enemy you can't win, and you have no escape route and no area of retreat, you fucked up bad. And honestly, it's your fault. Why in the fuck did you engage an enemy you couldn't win with no escape route? You fucked up. You fucked up. That's your fault. So again, let me just repeat the 11th section. If 10 times the enemy's strength, so if you outnumber the enemy 10 to 1, basically this is your battle to lose. You just surround them, and then again, the goal is to not fight them, because if you fight them, some of your men are going to die. You're going to lose resources. So if you outnumber them 10 to 1, surround them. You offer them terms. If you're not a dick, if you're offering them somewhat favorable terms for their surrender, and they're surrounded and they're outnumbered 10 to 1, they're probably going to take you up on your offer. And then you won, and nobody died. Their cities weren't burned. Their resources weren't destroyed. Everyone's alive. Everything's intact. You win. That is the hallmark of success. Great success, as Borat would say. Now, if you outnumber them 5 to 1, then you got to attack them. You got to fucking put the fear of God into them, and then demand their surrender after they've realized they've lost. If you're twice as numerous as them, you outnumber them 2 to 1, then you need to divide them. That way you can divide them, and then you outnumber them more, and then you can basically divide and conquer. If you're equal, it says be ready to fight them, but don't fight them. So if you're equal, you don't have the advantage. So you want to basically stage and be prepared, but you need to basically be very careful. You need to watch the enemy's movements to see if they're going to attack you or what's going on, because you need to wait for a favorable condition to present itself before you attack, because if you don't outnumber the enemy, you could lose, especially if they have defenses.
So with that said, what happens if you're outnumbered 50 to 1?
Well, let's continue the sentence I was reading, and it'll answer that question.
Go ahead.
So,
there was up. I have to.
Do you have to? Do you have to?
I can't make this easy. I can't make this easy for you.
I guess not. All right. If fewer, so we're talking about not necessarily they have double your numbers or 10 times your numbers or 50 times your numbers, but you have fewer numbers than them, then be ready to evade them. It doesn't mean you're abandoning the fight. It just means you're evading them. You're not trying to lose ground, but you're trying to evade the army that outnumbers you. But if weaker, what you're talking about, avoid them. If you're outnumbered 50 to 1, you should not be there. You need to go somewhere else, and you need to gather your strength and fight a battle you can win. You can come back. Like, if there's some thing that, like, you're outnumbered 50 to 1, that's not a battle you need to fight right now. You need to go somewhere else where you can win, gather more resources, increase your numbers. Maybe later you can come back and take that objective. But if you're outnumbered 50 to 1, do not engage. And if the enemy finds you and they try to engage, fucking run. Napoleon was invading Russia, and the Russians were too poor to fight him. Actually, the Russians are an excellent example of this. So the Russians could not engage Napoleon. Napoleon's army was too strong, so what the Russians did is they retreated, and they burned their crops. because Napoleon didn't believe in long supply lines. He basically foraged off the enemy. So because the Russians were burning their crops, they didn't have any food. And eventually, Napoleon took St. Petersburg, and he's like, I conquered Russia. Well, he had no food. And then winter set in, and they ate their horses because they had no food. And then Napoleon realized his army was going to starve to death if he stayed in Russia. So then he's like, okay, we have to leave Russia. And as soon as he tried to leave St. Petersburg and start marching out of Russia, the fucking Russians pushed his shit in over and over and over again. Because again, this is a perfect example. When Napoleon was strong, the Russians ran. They ran and they burned the resources behind them. Now, once Napoleon was in St. Petersburg and he was starving and he tried to leave to go back to France and resupply, then the Russians attacked and they fucked him up hard. That was the end of, basically that ended Napoleon's reign. Like he wasn't defeated, he wasn't captured or anything, but that was the end of his massive expansion, his conquest. It was it. The Russians ended it. And they were poor farmers. They ended an empire because they knew the value. Now imagine if the Russians, rather than doing that, they all gathered together on one massive peasant army, and they're like, for the glory of Russia, comrades, and they fucking rushed Napoleon's army at full strength. They would have been slaughtered like animals, and then Napoleon would have been fine. And then he would have had all the crops of the Russian farmers to feed off of, and basically France would have conquered Russia. All right, anyway, so next part says, therefore, a smaller enemy that is inflexible will be captured by a larger one, to my point. So you're smaller, but you've decided to burn your boats or your bridges so you can't get away. Congratulations, you're fucked. Next section, a general is the safeguard of a nation. When this support is in place, the nation will be strong. When this support is not in place, the nation will not be strong. So basically, what they're talking about is you need a military. I know in the modern era, people think like, oh, America. And actually, what Trump is showing, Trump is starting to tell NATO to go fuck themselves. Because the Cold War has been over for like 15 years, more. Yeah, I don't know when I think of 93, when the Cold War, so like about 15 years. Cold War's been over 15 years. Why do we don't have to be the military bulwark of the entirety of Europe anymore. And in fact, we could be friends with Russia. I mean, we ended the Korean War. We're going to be friends with North Korea. If we could be friends with North Korea, we can be friends with Russia and China and everyone. And if we can be friends with the former communist bloc and our former enemies from the Cold War, there's no point, there's no benefit to maintaining NATO and basically being the military of these European countries. So what's happening is these European countries are realizing, oh, we spent all our money on welfare. We don't have the money for a military. Oh, shit. Oh, our children are being raped. What? So it's all kinds of fun. But basically, you have to have a defense. The safeguard of a nation is its military. Because, the world doesn't want to hold your hand and sing Kumbaya. We live in a world of scarce resources, and those resources are fought for. And it's not always personal. Sometimes, most of the time, it's just business. They're like, people are going to come and kill you and take your shit because they have a family to feed. Not because they hate you, not because they're evil, because you have something they need to survive, and they're going to kill you and take it. So what are you going to do? You have to protect it. Otherwise, you're going to die. Like the people who are prepping for the collapse or, whatever, but they don't believe in having a gun. If you store food, water, medicine, all these supplies for an emergency, but you don't have a gun, you're just holding that stuff for the first guy who finds you with a gun. You're like, oh, look at all the stuff I prepped for you. Here, take it. Don't shoot me. That's all you're doing. If you don't have a way to if you don't, I suck your dick, man. If you don't have the ability to defend yourself or defend your property, then you're just holding it for the first guy who comes up to you and takes it. All right. Section 14. There are 3 ways a ruler can bring difficulty to the army. 1. To order an advance when not realizing the army is in no position to advance, or to order withdrawal when not realizing the army is in no position to withdraw. This is called entangling the army. So what they're saying is, he says a ruler, not a general. Notice in the previous section he said a general is a safeguard of the nation. The next section he says a ruler can bring difficulty to the army. What he's talking about is when politicians, whether it's a king, an emperor, or whether it's a congressman or the president, tries to play general, orders an army to do something when he doesn't know he's not a fucking general. Like, But when politicians get involved, they're like, "Oh, this looks bad. I have a re-election coming up. I'm going to order the army to withdraw, even though they're winning and on the verge of defeating the enemy, thus dragging this war out another year because I'm worried about how this might affect the polls." That's how we lost Vietnam. Just so you know, we didn't lose any battles in Vietnam. It wasn't like the Viet Cong were such an amazing enemy and they totally had our number. We lost Vietnam because politicians and the media, basically,
the media.
We
it
just
wasn't politicians. It was the media.
Well, the politicians are the ones who called it.
Yeah, but it was the media. But anyway, you're right. Look, you're technically right.
The politicians could have just told the media to go fuck themselves and just gone anyway and won the war. But because the media told everyone, "Oh, we can't win. They're too yay communism." Then the people are like, "Oh my gosh, I guess we have to be communists now." And then the politicians are like, "Well, the voters have spoken. I guess." That's what we're talking about.
Sure.
That's what Sun Tzu is talking about. When what he calls rulers, what I'm calling politicians, start basically overruling the general who's trying to do his fucking job. His number one job is to defeat the enemy as quickly as possible while expending as few resources as possible, and then the politicians get involved and start fucking it up. All right, next.
There's an even more famous case. It'll be very quick.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not pretty popular to say, but the reason that Nazi Germany lost the war was because Hitler wanted to take command of the Eastern Front, and he completely fucked up the German army.
I agree with that.
Well, because he's again, like what happens is, especially like Hitler's a good example of a guy who had a god complex. He was a charismatic, leader. He had a lot of power. So they know a lot about their area of expertise, but then they start talking about shit that they know nothing about. But because they think they're smart in one area, they think that they're just, I'm smarter than everyone. So my opinion about something I know very little about is just more valid than yours. So what happened, leaders like Hitler, he thought he had this power. He thought he was God. So he just thought, because I'm Adolf Hitler, I know how to lead this army better than anyone. And of course he didn't, but he was so drunk off his own ego. Again, ego will get you fucking killed. And that's what happened with Germany. That's what happened in Vietnam. This ego bullshit. Instead of empowering the generals to win the war and just going home, they wanted to get involved. They wanted their fingerprint on it so they can brag about it.
Even if that was the case, do you reckon that Hitler could have resisted the Americans and the Russians?
Probably not. I mean, that's the point of making alliances. So, could Germany have taken over Western Europe? Yes. But when they started a war with Western Europe and Russia, and then America got involved, Germany really had no chance of winning at that point. But it was just
stupidly declared war on the United States.
Yeah, it was just a matter of time. Like there's no way they could win. So Germany was already fucked because they made too many enemies. But again, if Germany was smart, like I think we mentioned this before, fascism and communism are very similar. Hitler could have made peace with Stalin and gotten him as an ally, and then it would have been Hitler and Stalin and Japan versus Western Europe and America. He could have won, but no, his ego.
Do you really think that?
Oh no, he actually couldn't. No, he actually
he declared. He
Stalin.
Oh my God! Why don't you two just kiss?
Hang on a second. So TFM,
yes.
This guy stabbed Stalin in the back. Are you honestly saying that this guy turns around and says, "Hey,
no,
Stalin, let's be friends again"?
Right?
Ahead,
no. Hitler was retarded. He fucked himself, and that's why he
never fucked it up in the first place.
Right. If he was smart, if he read The Art of War, he never would have stabbed Stalin in the back because he would have known Stalin would have gone. Because really, the communists. Because you look what happened during the Cold War. As soon as the World War II was over, it was the West versus the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union had very little to gain by allying with the West. Ideologically, they were very opposed. The only reason why they allied with the West was because of what you said. Hitler stabbed Stalin in the back. So basically, if Hitler wasn't a retard and he actually fostered a good alliances, Germany would have had a good chance of winning World War II by allying with the Soviet Union. But Hitler's a retard, and they lost. They got their shit pushed in hard, and they deserve to. Because they didn't listen to Sun Tzu. They didn't listen to Sun Tzu. Next section. By not knowing the army's calculations and taking command of the army, the officers and troops will be hesitant. When the army is confused and hesitant, the neighboring rulers will take advantage. This is called confused and hesitant army, leading another to victory. Therefore, there are 5 factors of knowing who will win. One who knows when he can fight and when he cannot fight will be victorious. One who knows how to use both large and small forces will be victorious. One who knows how to unite upper and lower ranks in purpose will be victorious. One who is prepared and waits for the unprepared will be victorious. One whose general is able and not interfered by the ruler will be victorious. These 5 factors are the way to know who will win. Therefore I say, one who knows the enemy and knows himself will not be in danger in 100 battles. And that's like the big famous Art of War quote. The kind of know your enemy and know yourself. That's what he's talking about. So you have to know when you can fight and when you cannot fight. You have to know how to use small armies, how to use large armies, how to unite the upper and lower ranks, how to, look what he says, to be prepared and wait. So you know, if you can't win, don't fight. Wait for an advantageous something to happen, like the Russians did with Napoleon.
Wait for Cat to come along. Okay?
Wait for Cat and his fucking Friskies cat food that he's cooking. All right, one whose general is one whose general is able and not interfered with by the ruler. So when the politicians get involved with war, shit goes downhill quick. So the nation who lets their generals do their fucking job has an advantage over nations where the politicians like to micromanage the military. One who does not know the enemy but knows himself will sometimes win, sometimes lose. One who does not know the enemy and does not know himself will be in danger in every battle. And a lot of people don't understand what this means, because this is the big famous section from Art of War, the know your enemy, know yourself type of thing. So what they mean is you need to know your strengths and your weaknesses. You need to know your enemy's strengths and weaknesses. And this is why football teams watch like videotapes of the team they're going to play like next week. They'll watch highlight reels. They'll watch footage of the game. They'll even send people to videotape the game to bring to the locker room of the other team so they could watch how the other team plays. That is pure Sun Tzu. Know the enemy and know yourself. Because if you know yourself, it says right here, if you don't know the enemy but you know yourself, you'll sometimes win, sometimes lose. Because at least you know yourself. But if you don't know yourself or the enemy, you're going to fucking lose every battle. You're fucked. Because, and this is where ego comes in. Ego is the big thing which blinds you to your own weaknesses. Because you think you're invincible. You think you're the shit. You think you're just whatever. You can't possibly lose because you're so awesome. You're not being honest. You don't know yourself. Everyone has strengths. Everyone has weaknesses. You need to know both. And if you know yourself, you know your strengths and weaknesses, but you don't know the enemy that well, you know, again, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The enemy might surprise you. The enemy might be using deception against you. You might think he's strong when he's weak. You might think he's weak when he's strong. You might get outplayed because you don't know the enemy. However, if you know the enemy as well as you know yourself, you will always win because you would not fight unless you could win. But if you don't know yourself because of your ego and you don't know the enemy, you're going to get your fucking shit pushed in every single time. Anyway, so that was chapter 3 for Sun Tzu's The Art of War.